tonight is Purim, and so I decided maybe instead of I was going to do Yehavedat, a whole siman just on one halacha, but since Purim is Thursday night, I want to try to learn many halachot. So we'll read instead from the Sefer Torah Mu'adim from the Chief Rabbi Hacham David Yosef Shalita, and we'll read a bunch of halachot for Purim, and I think it's a better preparation because it's the last Sunday before Purim. So it says Hacham David Yosef Shalita, Noagim nilbosh begdei Yom Tov lechavod Purim. The custom is to wear Yom Tov clothing in honor of Purim. V'labesh begdei Yom Tov gam b'leil Purim. Even the night of Purim, it's very good to wear holiday Shabbat clothes the night of Purim. And so what I do personally, we dress up also. So I wear under my costume, I wear very nice clothes. In the morning, I wear nice clothes, and then I go home, I change into the costume. Purim mutar minadim ba'asiyat melacha. Purim, in the letter of the law, you're allowed to work. The Gemara says that we do not accept upon Klal Yisrael, we do not accept upon ourselves the Yom Tov aspect of the day. Because if you look at the Megillah, first it says Simcha Mishteh v'Yom Tov, and then the second time it says Simcha Mishteh. It doesn't say the word Yom Tov, which means they try to make it a Yom Tov, and the Jews are like, no, don't tell us not to work. It's already too much. We'll take everything else. So Minadin is mutar ba'asiyat melacha. It's the custom is to be strict to try not to work on this day. If someone works on Purim, you will not see any blessing from the beracha. So you're not going to make any profit. If you make money, it'll just come from somewhere else. So why should you work? Because if you're an employee, if you'll get fired, God forbid, if you get in trouble if you don't go to work, then you should work because you're going to lose if you don't work. But if you have your own business and you think you're going to make more money, you're not going to make anything more. But in the nighttime, you're allowed to do work. Okay. Let's skip this one because we are not in a walled city. מותר לעשות מלאכה של שמחה בפורים כגון לנטוע עבודניקי של מלאכים or לבנות בית חתנות לבנו. You're allowed to do like wedding preparations in Purim because it's something of special simcha, building the chuppah or something like that. וכן מותר לעשות מלאכת מצווה בפורים. You can do the work of a mitzvah כגון לכתוב חידושי תורה ופסקי הלכות. You want to write down חידושים or answers to questions, you're allowed to. Even to write complete letters to people, halachic letters, or to do a calculation of let's say your charity fund. It's allowed. You can ask your non-Jew employee or partner to do the job. Some people say that if it's a public service, let's say, for example, you're in the landscaping business. You're going to ask your non-Jewish partner to landscape. Everyone sees. Thank you, Esther. God bless you. I'll hold it. Okay. So everyone's going to see that you're landscaping on Purim. Some people say you should not do something like this, even by a non-Jew. Some people, they say that you cannot take a haircut on Purim. Thank you. Unless the barber is a goy, maybe because Haman was the barber. Haman was the goy barber. If you do not shave before Purim and you want to shave on the day, you are allowed to shave on Purim. You can cut your nails on Purim as well. If Purim is Friday, like this year, then for sure you can take a haircut in honor of Shabbat, even on this year, and maybe every year anyway. If someone, God forbid, passes away, you cannot mourn them, eulogize for them on this day. Unless it's a very big Talmid Chacham, a rabbi, in the time of the Levaya, but you don't cry. We don't fast on these days. Unless someone had a bad dream and he wants to fast for that. Some people dress up and wear masks and all these things and joke around. It's absolutely forbidden for men to wear women's clothing as a costume on Purim. You cannot cross-dress even for the holiday. It's also forbidden for women to wear men's clothing on Purim. There's no way we would waive a very strict commandment in the Torah of cross-dressing just so you want to be happy on Purim. And the adults have to make sure the kids follow this law. Even a little boy should not dress up like a girl on Purim, and a little girl should not dress up like a boy on Purim. Someone who cares about his soul should distance himself very greatly from all these types of cross-dressing. That's one that somehow a lot of people don't follow. It's very common. I don't understand why they do it. Very religious people, I see a lot of times they do this. You can't. It's a straight up pasuk in the Torah. You cannot wear women's clothing. Just because you want to drink and jump around doesn't mean you're allowed to. Does anybody hold this allowed? Let's see. Give me a second to read the bottom. Let's see. On the bottom, he says this. I'll read this little piece on the bottom for Nehemiah over here. This minhag to dance around and dress up. There's no source in the Gemara or in the Midrashim to dress up and to go crazy, or even in the Rishonim. The first person who mentions this custom is Mahari Mintz. I don't know when he lived. And the Ramah, Ramoshe Iswas, brings his opinion in his Sefer Darchei Moshe. But they didn't give a reason. The Eliyah Rabbah gives a reason. Because he went out wearing royal garments. What does it mean in Hebrew, להתחפש? To be free, but that's not what it means, right? Yeah. That's what it means. Why would they, isn't the word, but doesn't it mean to be free? Free, like hofish. It's not the same shoresh? Maybe it is. Maybe it is the shoresh. Because you're letting yourself free to do whatever you want, maybe. Anyway, he says this is not it doesn't make sense that because Mordechai was wearing, Ahashverosh put Mordechai at the end of the story in royal garments. That's not a costume. So because of that, we should all wear costumes. It says, I can understand from this, we should wear royal Shabbat clothes on Purim. And if you see the Sefer B'nai Yissaschar, which is a Hasidic Sefer, he brings the Maharam Hagiz, שנתן רמז למנהג זה, מה שאמרו, הם לא עשו אלא לפנים, אף הקדוש ברוך הוא לא עשה עמהם אלא לפנים. We only went to Ahashverosh's meal pretending like we're going, but inside we didn't want to be there. We were just acting like someone we were not. And so too now, we're going to pretend that we're something else. That's a Hasidic reason that they give for the costumes. Says Chacham David, ve'af ta'am ze eno maspeak. This reason also is not good enough. It doesn't work for him. I heard from another Hakam a reason. Megillah says in the Gemara, Malachim came and appeared to Ahashverosh like men. At the end of the story, towards the end of the story, right before Haman gets hung on the tree, so the Megillah just says, Harbona says to Ahashverosh, that he built the tree from Mordechai, and he says hang him on it. But the Gemara adds more flavor to the story, and the Gemara says if you look at the story, think about the story in Purim, when Ahashverosh gets angry, when Esther says, when Ahashverosh says, Mihu zeh ve'ezehu, who is this guy who's trying to kill your people? And Esther says, Ish sar ve'oyev Haman hara hazeh. This guy Haman, Ahashverosh was so messed up in his head. It says he went to the Ginat, he went to the garden to take a break. This it says in the Pasuk. It's not a midrash. He went to the garden to take a break. Now on this, the Gemara says, what did he see happening in his garden? Malachim started chopping down all his trees. those fruit trees, these beautiful trees of the king's garden. The men are chopping them down. He said, "Hey, what are you guys chopping them down for?" Haman said we should chop down all the trees, and that really got him crazy. And then that's when he went back in. He went nuts on Haman. So this is what the Gemara says. And so this rabbi wants to say that just like the angels dressed up as men, so too we should dress up as all sorts of things. מעיין הרב הגאון רבי מאיר מזוז in Sefer something Rabba she'en mekor amiti leminhag zeh. The Rabbi Mezuz is the one who wrote the Sidur Ish Matzliach Avodat Hashem. Also, he says there's no source for this whole custom of dressing up on Purim. Karov levadai, he says it's almost 100%. That this comes from the Goyim Yoshevei Europa, from the European non-Jews. What they do for, I don't know if they have Halloween and all these things, whatever they do. He says he's almost positive that's where this custom came from. Vayen Sham, if you check that sefer by Rabbi Mezuz, Shekatat betokef, he writes very strong, to absolutely not allow dressing up on Purim. Mahamat kama mechsholim ve'isurim, because a lot of problems can come from this, like cross-dressing. Habayim al yedei minhag by this custom. Uviyoter yesh le'a'id. Says Chacham David, we have to say this because we see all over the place that a man dresses like a woman on Purim, or the woman like a man. They're transgressing on an absolute mitzvah from the Torah. My father, Hacham Avadia, he says, my father talked about this in his Sefer Yabiya Omed, and in the Sefer Yehavedat, and I'm going to quote his words over here. Hacham basically bashes the whole cross-dressing thing. And so he's very strong on this. So if we dress up, we dress up. It became a big thing. Now already, even if it's shtuyot, in my personal opinion, this is not Hacham David now. This is just little tiny me talking. In my little opinion, this is almost like Hanukkah presents. Hanukkah presents also. Where's the custom for Hanukkah presents? What's the mikor? It's probably because of Christmas. But once the children are used to it, a little kesef maybe. But once the children are used to it, plus the children see the goyim have all the Santa Claus, they're going to feel that Judaism is worse. So we may as well continue doing it and let them feel Judaism is better. So for this also, I feel the same way personally with Purim costumes. I think costumes are shtuyot, honestly. If you ask me, on Purim, if I drink too much and you ask me for the truth, I'm going to tell you this is shtuyot, nonsense. What Jewish people dressing up like Frankenstein? So we'll do drinking in 1 second. But for this, what are the kids? What about the kids? The kids are going to say, "How come the goyim have all the fun? We don't have any of the fun." So I think we should still do it in a kosher way for the kids and my wife, who loves it, even though I think it's nonsense. Let's do the drinking. I think it's nice. Yeah, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's nice. My costume is the chief rabbi's costume. Always, for years, I wear that. Yeah, I don't think it's asur. Okay. We're going to talk about the drinking now in 1 second. Leor ha'amur, according to all that we just said, yeshli is ahead. You have to be very careful. Ule hazhid, and to warn others. Shezimchat Purim tiyeh simcha shel mitzvah al taharat hakodesh. The happiness in Purim, it should be holy happiness. Hold on 1 second. Okay. It should be happiness of holiness. Mitoch limud Torah. How about maybe learning some Torah on Purim? My custom, I try very, very hard. My wife is very helpful in this way. In the Purim, when I get home from shul in the morning, right away I sit down. I have Seudah in the morning on Purim, always. Because a lot, like we said this last week, I don't remember. A lot of poskim hold always Seudah in the morning on Purim. The Shla, Kafahim Palaji, Chacham Vadia himself, he always had Seudah in the morning. So I sit down and I try to study some Torah before the day gets crazy. And it's a very big day for study. So when you talk shilot v'tishbachot, maybe you can sing some good songs to Hashem. Not to have happiness out of nonsense, and translate kalurosh in terms. Lightheadedness, it means nonsense. Nonsense. Kol litzanut asura milabad litzanut shel abudat zara, says the Gemara. Litzanut is not allowed unless litzanut is, I don't know how to say it in English. Litzanut is how do you say litzanut? Clowning around, joking around really is only allowed if you're joking about an avodah zara. About a joke about Jesus, you can make a joke about Jesus. For example, the Gemara in Megillah says you're allowed to use bad words only if you're joking about avodah zara. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, for example, you can take an idol worshiper and you can tell him to take his idol and to stick it up his shin taf. That's what the Gemara says. If you spell that, actually, it's a curse word now, but I don't know what the Arabic. That's what the Gemara says. Tell him to take his avodah zara and put it up his shin taf. So you're allowed to joke around at the expense of avodah, but if it's not at the expense of an avodah zara, what are we joking around for? A bunch of kids hanging through the back of the car, driving through the streets without seatbelts, drinking. It's crazy. That's not what purim. That's not Judaism. This custom that a lot of yeshivas, they make a rabbi for purim. It's a guy gets up and he's pretending to be the rabbi. You ever see this? Go on YouTube. A guy gets up and he's going to be the rabbi, and he's just the whole thing is a clown event basically. When he drinks a lot of wine, he starts talking all about the rabbis and the staff. He makes jokes about all the rabbis that work there. He's making fun of the rabbis. It's a very bad custom, says David. Get rid of it. Don't join or participate with people who celebrate in this sort of a way. My Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yitzhak Dweck, Shalita, I used to go to his Purim Seudah. This is the way. He was I love him. He's from Halab himself. He was born in Syria. Comes from a line of Syrian chief rabbis, one after another. What did he do? His Purim Seudah every year is the same thing. He would sit by his table and he would say, Havivim Yisrael. Havivim Yisrael. Hashem loves us. And all day. That's every year. Every year, all he would say is, Havivim Yisrael. That's the true way. He's drinking and he's saying how much Hashem loves us. He's happy. That's purim. Let's do one more. Someone asked me this yesterday. Someone who's an avel, someone who I know who's sitting shiva, this person thought he can't join a seudah. I have no idea why. If there's no music, you can join the seudah purim. He has to have a seudah. He's an avel. And so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but an avel definitely participates in the mitzvot, just no musical instruments for an avel. And then let's do Akiva's about the drinking. Let me find it here. Let's skip to Avilut. Mishlach Manot, I think everybody knows this by now. Drinking. Mechayev enish lebitsume bepuraya. It says in the Gemara, I don't know where it is in this book. It says in the Gemara, Mechayev enish lebitsume bepuraya ad delo yada ben harur haman lebaruch mordechai. This is the source for the drinking on Purim. What does it mean? And this is the song. This is what they walk around singing. Good song. A man is obligated. Lebisume means they're saying to drink. It does mean to drink. Bepuraya, not sure exactly what that means. It might mean Purim, it might mean something else. Ad delo yada ben Arun Haman levelach Mordechai, until he doesn't know the difference already between curses Haman and blesses his Mordechai. By the way, Tosafot on this Gemara, there's a Tosafot right there on the top that says, he quotes the Yerushalmi, but the Yerushalmi says, by the way, there's also Arora Zeresh, Berucha Esther, blessed is Esther, cursed is Zeresh. Arurim kol yerushalayim beruchim kol Yisrael v'gam habona. That's Tosafot quotes the Yerushalmi Gemara, and that's why that is part of our tefillah. After the Megillah, we say all those guys. Arur Haman, Baruch Mordechai, Arur Hazesh, Baruch Ha'ested. It's from the Yerushalmi on this piece. So what does it mean? So you have to get drunk and drink so much until you don't know the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. That's a very big level. Imagine you drink so much that you might, God forbid, bless Hitler. I mean, who would ever get to a level like this? That's really, really wasted. So the Rambam, most of the poskim, they hold as follows. The Rambam writes I don't have the Rambam in front of me. The Rambam writes, on Purim, you have to drink wine until it makes you sleepy, and then you fall asleep. And then in your sleep, you don't know the difference between Arur Haman and Baruch Mordechai because you're sleeping. That's the mitzvah of drinking on Purim, says the Rambam. And I would say majority of the poskim hold this is the mitzvah of drinking. I'm going to go back and say this line again. Mehayev enesh lebesume bepuraya. A person is obligated to drink on Purim. Mehayev enesh lebesume. A person is obligated to drink bepuraya also means a bed in Aramaic. Drink and go to bed. Adilo yada, and once he's in bed, he doesn't know between Arut Haman and Baruch Mordechai. This is the practical way to read this Gemara. And Chacham Avodah Yosef, alav shalom, he writes in his Sefer Hazon Avadia, this is the way you read the Gemara. Rambam, right? He always makes a common, normal way. Running around town like a drunkard, there's no way. It's not. That same Gemara. It's that same Gemara. It's the next line. The next line of the Gemara, page 7. It says there were two rabbis, Rabbah and Rabbi Zera. They had a seudah together, and Kam Rabbah v'shahatel Rabbi Zera. Rabbah got up and he slaughtered Rabbi Zera in the meal. That's how drunk he was. That's what the story says. He killed him. And the next day, Ba'ira Hamara, he asked Hashem to bring him back to life, and he brought him back to life. And the Gemara says the next year, Rabbah tells Rabbi Zera, hey, you want to do Purim Seudah again together? And Rabbi Zera says, no way. He says, we had a miracle last year. I ain't relying on miracles anymore. This is the Gemara. Right after that story. Now, you can say, why did the Gemara bring that story right after the first line? Maybe to teach you, relax. But by the way, some hold that story is literal. The Maharshal holds that story is literal. And Rabbi Chana Wasserman, I may have told you this before. Sorry, sometimes I don't remember where I told to who. Rabbi Chana Wasserman, alav shalom, he asks a question. He says, Eshet Eliyahu, this is going to be a long one, so I'll try to make it short. He says, Eshet Eliyahu muteret la'achirim Allah. That is the title of his question. Eshet Eliyahu muteret la'achirim Allah. You understand the question? Okay, so you got the question, Nechemia? The question is this. You hear here. Someone who dies a wife is released from the marriage two ways, with a divorce or a death, God forbid, of her husband. If her husband dies, but then comes back to life, is she remarried automatically to her husband, or does he have to marry her again? This is Rabbi Chanan Wasserman's question. I think I said this once before. Yeah, there's a few examples they've been. No, actual death. Actual death. So it works both ways. Eliyahu Navi never died, but he left this world. He went up to heaven. Does that release his wife to marry whoever she wants, or is she stuck because her husband is not dead? That's one side of the question. And the other side of the question is Rabbi Zera, who died, at that minute, his wife can marry whoever she wants. And then the next day, he's living again. Does she belong to him anymore? That's the question. And so I'll give you a very short, I think there's only like 5 smart people here, so it won't take too. Not a period, but I'll give you. No. He goes like this. Rabbi Chanan Washman basically says like this. He says it's very lumdish. You have to use your thumbs for this, okay? He says basically like this. What severs a marriage bond? When you have a cord tying two people together, you have to cut the cord somehow. So when someone does the, God forbid, divorce, girushin, he writes the shtar, he gives it, that's cutting the cord. He cut the cord. If someone dies, the Torah says somehow the cord is cut. But what cut the cord? The guy just dropped dead. Did he do anything? Did he cut? Did he give his wife a divorce? No. But somehow he goes free. So what is that law in the Torah? So he says one of two ways. Either A, you look at a marriage as a one-time thing. I got married to you, and until something changes in this relationship, we're together. It's a new status quo. In other words, I'm not marrying you every second. I married you one time, and then until I change it, this is your new last name. Or the second way, I'm going to add my own words because this is how I understand Rav Chanan Wasserman. The second way, almost like an electric current. When you turn the switch off, did you turn off the electricity? No, electricity is still there, but you stop the current, right? You have a current of electricity. If you remove the stop, the current flows again, and the light turns back on. Did you build a new light? You didn't build a new light. I just removed what was stopping the light. And so, says Rav Chanan Wasserman, in a marriage, do we look at it like every single second he's alive? They're connected, they're connected, they're connected. And then the second they stop being connected, oh, they're not connected anymore. But the second he resumes, whoop, it's back together like an electric current. There's nothing you have to do. Just live together. So the Chidah, he brings a problem. I did not mean to do this today, but he brings a problem, Rav Chanan. I'll tell you one problem he brings. The Gemara says that two cases. Number one, someone is not allowed to marry their father's sister. Their father's sister. In addition, you're not allowed to marry your wife's sister. So number one, if a person's wife, God forbid, dies, he is allowed to marry his wife's sister. It's only forbidden to marry his wife's sister when his wife is alive. This is in Parashat Harimot. It says, "Litzror aliyah," to pile her on, huh? Yaakov is before many answers before Matan Torah, outside of Israel. That's why when second they went to Israel, she had to die. There's a different answer to this. And another shot is Yaakov only accepted upon himself the mitzvot atzeh and not the lot atzeh. There's a few ways to get about this. So when a person gets married to his wife and she has a nice sister, let's call her Sandy. So Sandy's there. I can't marry her. The second this woman died, suddenly I can marry Sandy. What happened that made me allow? What happened? If you say it's a one-time status quo where I marry my wife and something came into the world and said she's allowed and Sandy's not allowed. When my wife died, what happened that made her allowed? Nothing happened. She just left. But if you hold it's an electric current, my wife is gone. There's no more current flowing. Oh, so she's allowed now. So there's two ways to look at it. Another question, another proof he brings from the Gemara Nidarim. If someone says to a woman, am I going too far today? If someone says to a woman, I want to marry you I'm marrying you with this money on condition that on Friday the marriage is over. Is that allowed? Because you can make conditions. I'm going to marry you on condition that I go jump into the lake. I'm married on condition that I go to work tomorrow. You can do a condition. If you fulfill the condition, it's a contract. I want to marry you today on condition that on Friday the marriage is null and void. Can this work in Judaism? The answer is no way. You can't do this. You don't have the power. Why is the Gemara say you can't do it? Besides for the fact that it would just ruin the whole institution of marriage. You just take whoever you want. By the way, there's a whole documentary on YouTube you can check. There are Muslim sheiks, huh? They do it. Yeah. They do temporary marriages. They have to get approval from the sheik, I think, whatever. And they have women and they just contract them out to. I forgot the name of the documentary. It's crazy. You can't do this. Why? Says the Gemara. Because how are you eliminating the marriage? Says the Gemara. You're starting it, but what's eliminating it? There's nothing cutting the cord. Just your word from 3 days ago, that's not cutting the cord. So we learn from there, you have to cut. You have to do a poil. You have to do a peulah to break it. Anyway, the Hida, just to finish this thing, Rabbi Chana Wasserman doesn't answer the question. He says back and forth. The Hida actually brings this on this Gemara, and the Hida says they are resuming their marriage automatically. And what's the proof he brings? Matan Torah. Because by Matan Torah, it says when Hashem spoke to us, all of our souls left our bodies. So then, did every single person get remarried? Matan Torah. And also, what about the Kohanim? The Kohanim, the Kohen they can't marry a divorced person. They can marry a widow. But every single person didn't get remarried. They cannot marry a divorced person, but the widow of the Kohen can. Just not a Kohen Gadol. No, am I wrong? Just not the Kohen Gadol. But the Hida says, it doesn't say anywhere they all got remarried. In fact, the opposite. Yeah, just not the Kohen Gadol. Yeah, because the Kohen Gadol has to have a virgin. Bitula. Kohen Gadol means a bitula. Also, the opposite. Moshe says, go back to your tents, he says to them. Go back to your tents. Everyone's going to get married again. We learn from here, the second they come back, the electric current is flowing. Okay. It says everyone. They both died. So they both should be single when they come back. The Hida says no way. So the Hida says he makes a halacha psak. You don't have to get remarried. You're back to being married. So we learn from the Hida this idea of almost like the light switch. So the question is, you didn't know what to ask the real question. Huh? Oh, I'll tell you that in 1 second. Thanks for bringing. But no one asked the real question. What happens when Mashiach comes? What happens when we have Tehiyat HaMetim? You're gonna have to get married to your wife from 100 years ago, or is it gonna be automatic? I don't know. The Maharshal holds this story is literal, but the Ben Ish Chai holds it's not literal. The Rabbi Zera, he didn't kill him. He says the Ben Ish Chai on this page of Gemara, there's lots of stories. It's very interesting. I wish we had time to go through it. All the stories in this page the Ben Ish Chai holds is not literal, it's spiritual, which means they study Torah on Purim because it's such a day of Torah study. They study Torah on Purim such a high level that he literally took the soul of Rabbi Zera, which is in one world, spiritual world, and he literally pulled him out into a whole new world as if it left his body and he was in a new place. And so he holds it was just about Torah study. The answer is we don't hold you should be drunk, throwing up all over town. This is not what we want. We should drink a little bit, take a nap on Purim. This is the mitzvah according to the Rambam. And Achavadia says this is the halacha l'maaseh. And then you wake up and study some more Torah and enjoy in a kosher way. It should be a good holiday. We can have more questions, but I'll turn the video off now. In terms of other halachot,